Good afternoon, Year 4, 5 and 6. I'm Mrs Warwick and I'm going to do the assembly today. I've recorded it so that you can watch it in your classrooms because obviously we can't all be together at the moment. So I hope you've had a lovely day and you've worked hard, you've learned lots of interesting things. Now's the time to sit nice and still, not fiddle with anything, listen to the story I'm going to tell you and think about the questions that I ask as well. So, I want you to think if you have ever slept outside, if you've ever been lucky enough to go on a camping trip, maybe with other children, for example with brownies or cubs, scouts or girl guides, or maybe you've gone camping with your family. If you have been lucky enough to do that, can you have a little think about that now? If you've never been camping, you've never slept outside, I'd like you to try to cosy in the tent altogether, unusual, uncomfortable, very different from just sleeping in your ordinary bed, I'm sure. Well, I'm going to tell you a story now, a story that's important to Jewish people, and you can find it in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, and it's all about the time when the Jewish people were freed from slavery in Egypt and led by Moses into the desert. He told the Pharaoh that he had to let his people go, and eventually the Pharaoh was convinced, and Moses marched his people out of Egypt and into the desert. And they followed him and they trusted him because he said that God would look after them. And they were walking in the desert for a long time, and it's very, very hot in the daytime, but at night time in the desert it's very, very cold. And there were also wild animals, so it wasn't a very comfortable or safe place for them to be. And it wasn't long before the Jewish people were starting to grumble to Moses and say, God isn't looking after us. This is awful. What's he going to do to help us? And it was particularly bad when the food that they had carefully packed to go on this journey started to dwindle and there wasn't enough to eat. And Moses became worried and he prayed to God, and God said, go and tell my people that I will send down manna from heaven, the bread of heaven for them to eat. Every day, each morning, I will send it and they can just pick it up from the ground and collect it and they can eat the manna that day for them and their families. And every day I will send it. They must have faith in me and I will look after them. So Moses went and told the Jewish people that that's what God would do. And they waited, and the next morning, true to his word, there on the ground were these small flakes just lying on the sand. And when they picked it up, this was the manna from heaven. And it was scattered all over the ground. And the people gathered it up and put it into bundles to keep safe for the whole day. Some people took a lot and other people didn't take very much at all. But God made sure that there was always enough for the people when they came to share it with their family. Now they've been told to take enough for that day, and most people listened, but some people thought, well, I'll just keep a little bit, I'll save a little bit so that there's some more left in the morning. And in the morning, when those people woke up and they looked at the manna that they had saved from the day before, it was full of maggots and disgusting and completely inedible. And God was angry with them because they hadn't trusted him that he would send more manna from heaven. And after that, the Jewish people learnt their lesson, and they only took enough for that day. And every morning there would be fresh manna from heaven and water to drink. Except on the 6th day of every week, people had to take enough for 2 days, because on the 7th day they had to rest and they could be at peace, and they did not need to gather food. They would have saved enough food and they could eat it on the 7th day as well. So I want you to think, how do you think it would feel to know that God had looked after his people so well? How do you think it would make Jewish people feel to know that every day God had provided for their ancestors? I think it's probably a feeling of gratitude that they were looked after, because living in the desert is very, very hard, and they wouldn't have been able to survive without God's help. So every year at around this time, and in this case it's going to be on the 2nd of October, Jewish people celebrate Sakura, and it's a festival where they remember when their ancestors were in the desert and God sent down manna from heaven every single day for them to eat and enough water for them to drink, and when God looked after his people. It's also a time when they celebrate and give thanks for the harvest. So it is the Jewish harvest festival, because at this time of year we're gathering in all the things that have been grown on the land. And when they have this special festival called Sakura, they build something rather special to use. I'm going to show you a picture of one. I'm going to get the angle right so that you can see. They build a special temporary hut or little shelter, and if they can, they build it outside. This one has been built outside, and this is a Sakura. So they will build a little hut, something similar maybe to remind them of what it might have been like to try to live in the desert, where you'd have to keep walking and walking and dismantle your little hut, walk and walk and walk, and then build it up again. So they build this temporary shelter, this Sakura, maybe in their garden if they have a garden. If they don't, they build it inside. But they decorate it. This is decorated with branches and leaves, and there are gaps in the ceiling so that they can see the stars, so they can look up at the stars and think about what it must have been like for their ancestors to sleep out in the desert. And you should be able to see that inside their Sakura they fit in a table and chairs, because they share a meal inside with their families. So they eat their meals in there, and some people even sleep in their little hut. And they do this festival, this celebration, a harvest festival, for a week. So from the 2nd of October on Friday until the following Friday, this will be the Festival of Sakura, and they'll give thanks to God for looking after their ancestors and for the harvest. So what I would like you to think about is Sakura is a time for families to come together and to share food and to give thanks for things that have helped them and the way that they have been looked after. During this week, it would be lovely if you could find a peaceful, quiet place to have a think to yourself about the things that you are grateful for and you're thankful for. And if there are people who look after you very well, maybe you could have a think about how to say thank you to them for all the love and kindness that they give you. Okay. I hope you have a lovely rest of the week. And if you see me around school, maybe you can come and tell me something that you're thankful for.